Good morning everyone and welcome back to the second section. Today I'm going to talk about your literature review. So everyone submitted your work, yeah? So everyone submitted your homework, yes? So I think as you guys reminded last time, let me just check. Yes, alright, so what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to give you guys general feedback next time, alright? So I will be giving you detailed feedback for your for your actual assessments. So for actual assessments in this course, there are only two. One, the literature review draft. The other one, the final literature review. All right. So for this particular work, it's just for us to, or for me to get to know your work. All right. So it's not assessed at all. Okay. So thank you all so much for submitting your work. So let me just first of all draw your attention to what you need to write. All right. So I think one day before section 4. So if you look at the deadline right here. Morning. So you can see the deadline. So 25th September, that will be the time that you need to submit your literature review draft. Alright, it's not a lot, it's only 500 words. So if I can also direct your attention to your booklet, I think on your booklet there should be some kind of instruction as well. Just a moment. Let's see if I'm able to find that. It is here. Right, so if you go to page 26 of the booklet, alright, 26. So you should be able to find instructions for your literature review draft or your literature review assessments. Yeah. So in the meanwhile, I'm gonna use the document here. So if you scroll down from our class Moodle, if you scroll down to this part, assignment submission here, you should be able to see the instructions. Basically, it's the same document, all right, on page 26. So I'm gonna refer to this one. Let's talk about what you need to write for your actual assessment. Yeah. So one more time, please do the writing on your own. Do not ask any kind of tool to write for you, all right? So the deadline, as mentioned earlier, it will be one day before section 4, and that would be 25th September. All the deadlines are up there, right next to the Moodle submission, turn-in submission, all right? You can see it here, right here, all right, 25th September. And for the final literature review, it's gonna be 2 weeks after we finish the course, and that will be 14th November, all right? So there are only 2 deadlines that you actually need to pay attention to, all right? One more time. 25th September and 14th November. So I think it's usually 5 minutes before midnight. That will be the deadline. Okay? All good? Okay, thank you. So let's have a look at the instruction as to what you need to write. So it's relatively straightforward. What we need, first of all, the word limit is essentially just 500 words. I give it more or less, you can write 10% more or less. All right, so 450 to 550. All right, that would be the word limit. So it does not include any kind of reference list. All right, so exclude your reference list, but we will include the in-text citations. All right, in a moment, I think later on today or next week, I'll talk to you about your in-text citations. All right, we do need a cover sheet. All right, where are you supposed to locate that? Follow me here. You only need to submit the cover sheet one time. Follow me here. Look at this one. Again, still under assignment submission, you should be able to see this one. Download declaration and also feedback form. So the feedback form, or what we call a cover sheet, is actually right here. So download this document. You can see it right here. It's a very simple document. So what I need you to do is just to what? Just to fill in your information here. All right, your name, your ID, your class. This is actually group C. All right, and then towards the end, right here, I just need your signature and also the date of submission. All right, I need this document because if you see it here, it has got some kind of declaration. So declaring that the work is entirely produced by you and there's no plagiarism. All right, and that's why we need your signature. Concerning the signature, you might be wondering, hey, how am I supposed to give this to me? So you can just type your name there, or if you want, you can use your iPad or anything that just sign it there. All right, I just need this document, okay? And then do not fill in any kind of stuff here because this is the marking scheme. This is marking criteria, the rubric. When I'm actually grading your work, we will be giving you comments concerning several things. Number one, so all the time, if you still remember last time, I was telling you about function, right? What exactly is the function behind the sentence? I may not be able to understand the content of your work, but I should be able to find out the function behind the sentence. I should know what you're doing there. Are you trying to tell me the purpose? Are you trying to tell me the background? Or are you trying to tell me, your research objective? Stuff like that. So I need to know the purpose of writing. So whether, in terms of communication, it's actually effective or not. So I'll be giving you a take concerning your writing. All right, it's actually here, or what? Okay. And then substantiation concerns reference support. So whenever you're making a claim, right, do you have reference support, or are you saying it? All right, are you just saying that many people are actually interested in this? There's a growing trend in blah blah blah. Are you just saying it, or do you have actual statistics or actual research support to show it to people that this is something that we're focused on right now? All right. So this course elements. So we're going to talk about your sentence structure, topic development, whether things are actually coherent or not, and then basic grammar stuff, and just like this. So these are the 4 criteria that we'll be looking at whenever we're grading your literature review draft and also the final ones. All right, and then I'll give you feedback as well. So usually when I'm grading your work, I'll be using track changes. I'm sure you know what it is. All right, track changes goes like this. So I'll be giving you comments, typing things like this. If you're unable to see my comments, you might just want to go here and click all markup. All right, then you should be able to see what I have done to your paper. All right. So sometimes if you're reading on your iPhone or your phone, you may not be able to see the edits or changes. You actually have to read the copy on your desktop or your on your computer. Okay. Okay. All right. So this is what you need to do. And then when you're done with this document, what are you gonna do? Submit the document to a different folder, to a different section. So again, showing that to you right here. You see, download right here, upload. Upload the signed declaration form right here. I only need you to submit the form once, so you don't need to do it twice. All right, for the final literature review, you don't need to submit that. So I'll be using the same form, all right, to give you feedback for your assessments. Okay, so submit that in here, just like this. And for your actual writing, all right, do not combine the cover sheet, this kind of declaration form with your writing. Your writing should be submitted separately in here. All right, that will be turned in. Because if everyone is giving me the same cover sheet, the plagiarism rate is going to be pretty high. All right, because everyone's using the same thing, right? And that's why we have got separate submissions. All right, one more time. Download the feedback form or declaration form here, and then submit it here. All right, and then submit your Word document for your actual writing, and then turn it in box, just like this. Okay, all good? So that would be the logistic details. Now, going back to the file right here. So, what I need, first of all, I need a title. A title that would actually give me all the keywords of your writing. All right, it should be really informative. So I think last time I showed you some of the titles of your previous students' work. All right, in here. So you may also take a look. I'm not saying that all the titles in there are actually well written, but at least they might be able to give you some idea about what you might want to write on later on. All right, one more time. We are only using your final year project or your capstone project or your dissertation as an example to improve your writing. So if later on you actually want to change your topic for your actual final dissertation or final year project later on, doesn't matter. All right. Essentially, right now, just write on what you think you can actually potentially develop into your capstone project. Okay. All good. All right. So I need the title. I need an introductory paragraph telling me about the purpose, research, problem, and also significance. So today we'll be looking at some examples of literature review, all right? And then remember, whenever you are talking about literature review, right, I want you to be a little bit more critical. When we talk about literature review, it's not just about summarizing, it's also about criticizing, right? You need to criticize what exactly is the gap in there. All right, as I mentioned earlier, the formula is always very straightforward. They've done A, B, C, but D, E have never been done. And that's why in your paper, you'll be focusing on D and E. So in a way, you need to criticize, all right? If everything they're doing is actually great, then what is the value of your work, right? Okay, so this is also why we're saying that you need to create research-based, or here, highlight to people your actual research gap. So for our paper right here, it's actually rather straightforward. So it's only 500 words, so we're not expecting a lot of references. So around 5 to 6 references. But this is not supposed to be definite, all right? If you feel like you need to use more references, feel free to do so, all right? I'm not going to limit your writing, okay? And then for this course, we are going to go for either APA or IEEE referencing style. So I'm going to give you the details in Unit 4, so in Section 4. All right, but bear in mind, just either style. In the past, I think students were combining 2 styles together, which makes it really odd, right? So, so concluding your paragraph, but you should talk about your research aim and also the research questions. This is usually how we do it, because after all, when you talk about introduction, right, we talk about the major problem. What is the problem out there? Remember, for research, right, you should organize everything into problem-solution structure. All right, you need to problematize. All right, make it like a problem. So in the introduction, you need to do that, and then later on, criticize. Summarize the literature, criticize the literature, and then that will bring you the gap. And whenever towards the end, then you might want to bring, hey, how are you going to fill in the gap? All right, what exactly are the questions that you're posing in order to fill in the gap? All right, so that is just read the basic structure of your literature review. We now have only like 500 words, but when you're writing your actual work, you need to expand that into a lot more sections. All right. So yeah, just like this. Just some more logistic details. Bear in mind, this is something that I reminded you guys earlier. So if you have submitted your work elsewhere, and if you submit that here, that would be plagiarism. You are plagiarizing yourself. All right. So please be sure that everything that you're writing here is completely new. Okay. All right. So some of you will be wondering, hey, if I'm giving you the work in here, can I later on use the same work for your capstone project? I think you will develop something else, or you develop something your topic further. So, and it's just 500 words anyway. So for your submission of your actual capstone project later on, can you just rewrite or paraphrase yourself a little bit more? All right, just don't think that you've written a paragraph. I'm just gonna put that in your future work. That is not gonna work. Okay. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we would have the teacher-student unit constellation sections in Unit 6 and Unit 7. All right, I'll let you know the details. So you have got a lot of things in here. As I mentioned earlier, whenever you're submitting your work to Turnitin, the Turnitin will show you the plagiarism rate. So can you please check it there, all right, to see whether you have paraphrased yourself enough or not. Plagiarism, I'm not sure if it were. Turnitin right now has got AI detection, so it will detect to what extent the paper is actually generated by AI. All right. So again, please do the writing on your own. So nothing much. This would be the basic stuff for your actual assessment. All right. Any questions? All right. So I will be expecting to see your work one day before section 4, and that will be 25th September. Okay. So 2 weeks later. All right. All right. So I'm just gonna go back to the PowerPoint, and in the meanwhile, let's have a look. All right. We are in section 2, but we are working on Unit 3. So Unit 3, and that would be page 28. So on page 28, right? I'm gonna skip a lot of questions. A lot of times some questions on your paper or on page 28. They're only there for you to think about what you want to, how you're supposed to approach your writing, approach your research. All right. So I'm just gonna go into the main meat of our writing course today. So a lot of times, so the learning outcomes today, by the end of today, you should know the strategies to actually criticize and also summarize the literature, and at the same time present your stance. So just like this, very straightforward. So you have got a lot of questions on page 28, all right? I do want to know though, whenever you're working on your research, how are you going to look for papers? How do you usually look for papers?
Google Scholar.
Sorry?
Google Scholar.
Google Scholar. Thank you. Great. All right. So you guys already know. So don't just Google, but if you go for Google Scholar, then you should be able to find a lot of more things in here. At the same time, also go to a library. All right, because again, Google is essentially a commercial company. So if you Google Scholar, you may not be able to download the entire article. Whereas in our library, we have paid a lot of money to the journal databases, and that's why if you look for the same article, right? For example, legal language is something that I worked on earlier. This kind of stuff, right? Then you might just want to highlight people the article and then just go back to our library and download the paper, all right? One thing though, if you look at quotation marks in here, it will be able to give you different styles, but only the IEEE referencing style is not there, all right? So if you're going for IEEE, you need to do it manually, all right? In a moment, I'll show you, in some journal databases, they do generate IEEE referencing style for you, but let me just tell you this. Even in our library, this kind of generate references, right? They're outdated. So no, they're not exactly updated according to the latest guideline. So you need to manually check everything. All right. So this is APA citation style. So concerning the citation styles, right? If you look at our course website, we've got a lot of resources here. So you have got the IEEE by Monash University. So a lot of guidelines, because a lot of times APA citations, IEEE citations, or any kind of reference style, they're really tedious. All right, you look at full stop, you look at punctuations, you look at whether there's a brackets or not. So I mean, it's just really tedious, but they're not exactly difficult. All right, it requires really good eyesight to see, hey, if there's any space and that kind of stuff. I mean, in Unit 4, I'm going to talk about it briefly, but I don't want to go through everything in detail. All right, just tell you, hey, there's a full stop, or then space, and that kind of stuff. All right, so read everything on your own a little bit more first. All right, and yeah, just like that. Okay. Yeah. And then let's have a look. So we talk about reading strategies. A lot of times, if you are doing reading though, what is probably the first section that you're gonna read? Sorry, thank you so much. Abstract, right? So abstract is possibly something that you'll read first, together with your title. All right, so I mean the article title. So basically, the article title and also your abstract will basically be able to give you the details. And even after abstract, below abstract, you should be able to see the keywords, right? So then, based on the keywords, then you know how to look for articles that are actually similar to yours. And once you have found an article that is relevant to your field, go to the reference list, right? Because the person cited a lot of really similar papers to your work, and then just go to the reference list, right, and go to those papers, and then you can just read everything. Also, bear in mind, have a look at how the keywords are changing. If you're unable to locate the article, it has got to do with to what extent you're using the keywords correctly. All right, so try different keywords, try different combinations, try different, basically keywords in here, right? It could be about context, in Hong Kong or in other places and that kind of stuff. So I think you know what to do. So I'm not going to go through this in details, but basically, yes, abstract is something that we're going to talk about in the last section. How are you supposed to write your abstract? All right, so just like this. So you have got a lot more things in here. Let me just tell you this. So mind telling me which particular library system or journal system that you guys usually go for? If I am gonna go to our library here. Usually for electronic sources here, right? Hopefully it's gonna work today. Are any particular database that you guys usually go for? No. Or you guys just go for a one-stop search here? I mean, if you type in the keyword, this is what we call one-stop search, you will still be able to find articles. But to make it more specific, all right, to look for your area, so I would just recommend that you go for electronic sources right here, and then go to databases according to your discipline. For example, you guys are actually usually computer, not calling it computer science. And you can see these are the usual two major databases that you can go for. All right, so if you go in there and type in the keywords, a lot of times I think it will be a lot more specific concerning the articles that you have. For example, artificial intelligence. And of course, you need to narrow down the keywords a little more. All right, so what I'm going to show you right here, very briefly, library search. In our library, they've also got a lot of workshops telling you what to do. All right, so you can narrow down search yourself a little more. You can see, you can download the article here. Sometimes if you just click in there, all right, have a look to see if you're able to see any kind of quotation marks, and see if you're able to download the reference list. Let's see if they have it here. Here, cite this. So there you go. You should be able to see, again, the generated citation. But then you can sort of see this citation, oh yeah, it is done in IEEE referencing style. But so if you're using IEEE, I think that is great. But then if you are going for APA, then you need to rewrite everything on your own. Okay? So usually for each journal database, somewhere out there, up here, at the corner, you will be able to find the quotation marks or cite. This is how you're going to save time a little more. Okay, just for your reference. I mean, it's really just basic. Okay, so databases. These are the two that would be really recommended for your research. But of course, down here you've got a lot more. So explore. Okay, okay. So nothing much. So as mentioned earlier, as you guys talked about, so usually you might be going for Google Scholar. You might be, scanning, the abstract and look at the reference. Sorry. Where did I go? Here, look at the reference list. Say, for example, if you find that, hey, this article is actually really relevant to what you're working on right now, I think if you look at the reference list, you will be able to find a lot more. The citations, all that kind of stuff. A lot more articles that are actually going to be useful for you. So this is how you also narrow down the search. And by reading different articles, you also get to know the keywords they usually use. Sometimes, again, it's just a matter of whether you're actually hitting the right words. All right, so nothing much. So I'm gonna skip this page. Nothing much. It's kind of really general. All right, just basic research. And then here, as mentioned earlier, read the themes, highlight and do annotations. So I mean, different people have got different way of reading articles. Yeah, some people like to print out the entire thing and just do the marking. Some people like to take a Word document and start typing the keywords and all this stuff like that, right? So you've got your own reading strategies. In a moment, I'm going to introduce you to one particular program or some kind of programs that might be useful for you. Ever heard of your EndNote? EndNote program? Ever heard of this before? Yeah, some of you may or may not have. All right. In our library, we've also got libraries workshop for that. So EndNote is essentially a kind of program that will be able to help you compile your reference list. Imagine if you're doing research, right? You might be reading hundreds and thousands of papers. I mean, there's no way that every single time you're just gonna go to the journal database and copy and paste that. It's gonna take you a lot of time, right? If you're planning on going for research, you need some kind of program to help you. In a moment, let me show you one. All right. Yeah, just nothing really particularly difficult here. So let me show you the program. So you have got on your handout, I think task one somewhere. All right, so page 29 down here. So task 3.1, you should be able to see this. So EndNote, this one, as mentioned earlier, is actually supported by our library. Now I'm going to show you one program that I usually use. So that will be Zotero. Zotero is actually free. I'm not selling the program, I'm not selling anything to you, all right? They do have subscribed services. But then Zotero is essentially kind of similar to EndNote. What you have here is just that you are organizing your articles by themes, all right? Because a lot of the times you have got different keywords, right? For example, earlier I was working on a paper on COVID-19, talk about teaching and learning. Then you might be able to see, hey, I've got different folders here, right? Documenting all the different articles. So you have COVID-19 concerning comparative studies, comparing teachers and students' views. You've got a folder talk about students' views. You've also got crisis management, a lot of different research articles that I've been working on. Now basically I've put in all the articles in here. All right. Once you have done that, you should be able to see the metadata concerning the author's names, all the information that you need to compile the reference list. Right. So basically, what is going to happen just that if you could make annotations in here by themes, for example. You'll be adding in some kind of keywords, right? Oh, so this part is actually going to be useful. There are two major issues, summarizing the keywords in there. Because after all, if you go back to the same piece of writing every single time, it's going to be pretty time consuming, right? So you need some kind of summary. Again, some of you might prefer just printing out the entire thing and writing notes. That will be fine as well, right? You've got your own way. But this is usually what I would do. And then I'll be making notes. And by notes, you can also include different tags in there. So you can tag this, and the next time you search for the tag, and then it will just pop up all the things that you need for your writing, for your research. So then when you're working on this topic, it's going to be easier for you to retrieve all the relevant articles, right? Again, just for your reference. At the same time, it will also store the articles for you, either in the library or either on your computer, or if you have subscribed to their online cloud system, they will just upload the articles up there for you, right? Nothing much. So essentially, if you just highlight, for example, these are the 4 articles that are going to be useful for me, then you just click on it, and then you should be able to see different styles. Then you just copy and paste the reference list onto your paper, right? And it will generate the entire reference list for you. But of course, again, you can do it manually, one by one. I think that would do as well. So this is only one program, all right? So usually, if you have got it here, when you have installed the program, then on your Word document up here, you should be able to see Zotero. All right, and then there you go. You can just insert the indexations or insert the reference list towards the end. So it's going to help you with that, okay? Or if you talk about EndNote, essentially it's the same. All right, it's kind of like a similar interface, I think. All right. So if you talk about another program, for example, what we call Recube, Recube, it's also the same. All right, similar interface. Talk about giving tags, installing giving articles in there, and then generating reference list. So all the programs. Recube, Zotero, EndNote, they're all similar. So if you're interested, right, go to our library. Again, our library usually hosts different workshops concerning this kind of annotations or referencing programs. Okay. Any questions concerning the programs? Again, for you, you don't have to if you don't really find it useful. All right. So let me just get down to the main content today. So on page 30, let's talk about the main purpose of your literature review. there are several questions that are actually rather important. A lot of times, you need to think about these, all right, so that people can actually understand the value of your work. A lot of times, when we talk about originality, right? So when we talk originality, it does not have to be completely new. It could be about your method, all right, that you're using a new method. It could be about a context, right? Context, for example, they've done it in school or in private school, but they've never done it in secondary school, for example. Then that will also be a new context, right? But then, of course, a lot of times, no matter what, you need to be able to justify. You need to provide justification. Why is it really important that we are conducting the research in a new context, all right? So why is it not good enough if we have done it in secondary school, or sorry, private school? Why should we move it up, all right? So you need to justify. So for you, a lot of times I'll be asking you, your engineering justifications. So if you're picking this program over the other, why? What are the benefits? Just go back to the literature. The literature will be able to tell you why, all right? So a lot of times, think about this. Is it really worthwhile? We talk about implications. A lot of times, for implications, we talk about two things. One, theoretical, the other one, practical implications. So, or sometimes you might also be thinking about pedagogical implications for my kind of research, right? Because I'm talking about teaching, right? So what are the implications for teaching then? That will be more about practical implications. What about in your field, all right? What are exactly some of the values? So these are also some of the basic questions that you have to answer whenever you're coming out with a new idea. I mean, the worst kind of idea is that you have got to really, you've come up with an idea and you just go to your professor, is this idea feasible? But then the question here is that, have you done your literature review yet, right? Your professors will not be able to find out whether your work is feasible or not unless you've done your literature review to find out the gaps, all right? So don't just say, something I think of this topic. I want to talk to you. Is it really feasible? If you're just asking a professor this, you're asking your professor to do the literature review for you, all right? And that is not fair, okay? So before you have got any research ideas, go back to the library, read the work, all right? Read up everything, and then find out the gaps first. And then your professor will be able to point out to you whether that gap is appropriate or not, whether that gap has already been filled or not, okay? So that will be your work. And that's why you need to actually work on literature review. And that is also why in this course we are focusing on this one. All right, let's move on. So you have a lot of things in here. Just gonna show you what we mean by originality, all right? It could be, for example, a question that has never been asked before, or for example, you find that the previous answers are simply not good enough. So again, you see the wording, right, rather negative. You are criticizing, right? You're criticizing what they've done. They're not doing good enough, all right? And then again, you might be proposing some kind of new theory to look at that, but then you need to justify. Why is that using a new theory is gonna give you something different? Why is it really worthwhile to actually go for a new theory? Or it could be a new context, all right? The new context, for example, right now you've got Gen AI. I mean, clearly a new tool, all right? It's never been done before in a lot of different contexts, right? Especially for education. I mean, it's happening right now, and that's why a lot of people are actually working on research on Gen AI tools. We don't know the impacts yet, and that's why people are actually working on it. I mean, it's pretty real. The impacts are real because of education is basically affecting learning and assessments for everyone. So you can see the values and the impacts are actually pretty serious, right? So, and there you go, you've got the research space in there. So again, you might be repeating the earlier study and using that in a new way. Sometimes you might be revisiting a study like 20 years ago and then redoing it. But of course, you need to justify why is that it's important that we are doing the same research that people have done like 20 years ago. It could be, for example, like when we talk about sociolinguistics, language use, all right? People did some kind of survey like 20 years ago. But think about this: language attitude today might be different, all right? Given the proliferation of technologies, given the changing linguistic landscapes, we've got different languages coming together. So how people look at language right now might be different from how people looked at language 20 years ago. So in a way, that would also justify why you're doing the same study, right? But of course, again, so after doing the study, then what? So your professor will always be asking the questions, so what? So what if they're different, all right? So think about the implications, all right? Always remember these questions. So a lot of times, these are, again, just for your reference, this is what we mean by originality. One more time, at your level, we are not expecting a lot of originality, just lightly, just a bit of originality, I think that would do, all right? Always talk to a professor concerning a content, all right? So again, showing to people whether it's actually worthwhile or not. So again, we're just still talking about page 30, right? So just repeating what I said earlier, the contribution to knowledge, all right, to theory, to practice, all right. So theoretical and also practical implications, as simple as this, nothing much. Now, how are you? Why is that we need literature review? A lot of times you need to prove to people that there is a theoretical basis, all right, for your idea, all right. So even if you go to work, actually, if you are developing some kind of application, right? Still, you need to do your job. You need to do your literature review, right? People might be asking, your boss will be asking you, so why do we need to work on this? What do we have in the market right now? What are the existing apps? And you are still doing the literature review, right? You're finding out what is actually happening here in the existing markets. And you might be pointing out, oh, they've got function A, B, C, but clearly functions E and F are missing here. So even in the commercial world, whenever you're developing an application, it's still the same idea, right? You are still working on your literature review, right? So a lot of times, you need to be able to show that to people that you're conforming to the work or to the style, to the convention by other researchers as well, all right? So a lot of things here. So yeah, I think these are just really general and rather repetitive. Basically, I've summarized them to you, all right? Think about the implications, think about the value, think about why, think about the originality, all right? It's the same old thing. All right, so allow me to skip some of the information, and I'll actually like to look at some of the examples together. I think that would be more practical. So still, some more general functions of literature review. One thing, we want to avoid plagiarism. All right, we need to show that to people the academic value of your work. As I mentioned time and time again, knowledge is like some kind of pyramid. Right? You need to build upon others' ideas. If you don't give me the literature, if you don't cite others, what you have done here might have already been done 20 years ago, and that's no value to your work. And that's why you need to show the people that, oh, they've done this, they've done this, they've done this, and they have not done this, all right? This is how we're breaking through the boundary of knowledge, okay? Nothing much. Creating your space, making sure that you're familiar with the field, and that you're actually pretty authoritative in your field, all right? A lot of times, by reading the literature, your examiner would know whether you are familiar with the fields or not. All right, so and that's why you need to go for the keywords and look for all similar articles or all the relevant articles. So now, the main idea of literature review is to provide some kind of conceptual framework. All right, is to provide some kind of framework for your analysis later on. Now, in your literature review, you might be adopting a particular framework that, in a way, that will help you analyze the data later on. All right. The kind of framework that you have will also change your interpretation, right? I'm only gonna able to give you like examples from humanities, okay? So for example, I don't know if you read a textbook or not a textbook, but a novel called Test of the Darfield. So for Test of the Darfield, it basically talks about a girl who was raped by the rich man. Now, so looking at this kind of story, right? So they say this is actually the data. How are you gonna interpret the story then? You have got your conceptual framework. If you talk about gender theory, all right, say in your literature review, you're reviewing gender theories and all that kind of stuff. Gender theory will tell you that, hey, back in those times, back in the day, men were having a more dominant position in a patriarchal society, all right? So that kind of raping was inevitable. It was actually justified, all right? So gender theory will tell you this thing. But then if you talk about sociology theories, it will tell you a different interpretation. Sociology will be able to tell you, hey, when you talk about the society structure, so we talk about rich class, lower class, and the girl was clearly from lower class. And so rich men raping girl in that way, again, is actually kind of like a norm back in the day. So again, sociology theory and also gender theories might be able to tell you a different interpretation of the same story. So the same goes to you. When you have got the data, right? How are you? What kind of theories or what kind of frameworks do you have? And you need to review the frameworks and the theories in your literature review, all right? So that it will give you the angle to analyze the data. And for that kind of stuff in your kind of work, I think your professors will know better, right? As you are reviewing the literature, by others, you'll also see how they are proposing the frameworks, how they are, analyzing data in different way. So originality could also be that you're proposing a new framework, or you're thinking, hey, this kind of theory will be able to give you new perspective on the data. I don't see why not, all right? But that would be a whole different level. But anyway, anyhow, hopefully I'm not confusing you too much, all right? Okay. Now, just going back to our cylinder structure. So on page 32, you'll be able to see something like this, the cylinder structure, as mentioned earlier. So at the very beginning, always talk about the major problem, right? And then you need to really review all the theories, all the studies, all the methods that people have done or used on the topic, all right? And the same formula will always apply. Tell me what they've done. Now, I've read a lot of work by computer science students. I don't know, students tend to be going for summarizing things by authors, all right? Author 1 has done this, author 2 has done this, author 3 has done this. But then a lot of times, when you talk about all the authors, right, they might be working on the same topic. So actually, for humanities or for others, we tend to group the literature by ideas, all right? So for example, for artificial intelligence in education in Hong Kong, all right? And then under this, I'm reviewing several people's work, right? Instead of going people by people, all right? So you just think about which style might suit you better. Because a lot of times, I think you need to review a lot more. So I think going by themes, going for ideas might be better than going by people, all right? Unless the person that you talk about is really prominent in the field, and you want to highlight to people that those are really prominent, like famous people, all right? So I want to quote their work, all right? So you see what I'm saying, right? So it could be done for each paragraph. You could do it like by person, all right? So author A and B, they've done this and they did this, and these are the results. Or I tend to go for it by results, all right? So the overall results are like this. Under here, several people have worked on that. I think that will give you a better idea, right? Again, I'll leave that to you. In more, I know that this sounds way too abstract for now. Today we'll be looking at some examples, all right? So I'm just gonna skip the theoretical bit. So bear in mind, whenever you're working on a literature, you need to go beyond the context that you're working on right now. Say, for example, if you're only working on some kind of application in Hong Kong, you need to step out of that, all right? You need to think about, hey, in other places, what they've done, and then narrow down, all right? What about in the Asian context? What about in Hong Kong context? And then review all the literature, right? Review all the studies that they've done on the topic, and find out all the gaps, and then summarize all the gaps, all right? So you cannot just focus on your particular context in there, okay? So nothing much. Now, I am just gonna go back here, components of your, so still on page 32, down there. This is also the kind of component that we'll be expecting you to have for your literature review draft. So you should be able to see the basic structure here, right? So introduction, if you see it right here, I need you to tell me the topic, or more specifically, can you problematize that if you could? What exactly is the problem that you're working on, all right? One more time, globalization, for example, is not, artificial intelligence is not a problem, all right? Is the ethical issues concerning assessments brought upon by generative AI tools, that will be the problem, all right? So ethical issues, whether people are using the work ethically for their own work, for their assessments, that will be the problem. So don't just talk about Gen AI or AI, artificial intelligence. Problematize, always remember. And then based on that, then you can talk about basically for the main body, right? I am just gonna highlight this to you. You've got a lot of things in here, but essentially, you need to review everything concerning the topic, all right? Right. You can talk about the recent discoveries, you can talk about the early discoveries, but no matter what and no matter how, whenever you're doing that, yeah, please be sure, I'm just gonna write here, please be sure to summarize and criticize. I mean, these are the two keywords that I keep stressing over and over and over again, all right? Okay? And that's why if you look at criticizing, right, the turn is usually very negative. Last time we looked at some, for example, we looked at the word like however, looking at the word but, right? Then you start criticizing the work, right? So again, pay attention to the transition devices in here, right? And then summary. After summarizing, right? People might be providing some kind of summary just to tell people that, oh, so I've reviewed so much work, all right, what are the similar things and what are the things that are rather different from there then, all right? It could be that, hey, looking at the previous work, they've all of them have done work in education, all right, so similarities, but they have not done it in blah, blah, blah. So when we talk about agreements and disagreements, right, essentially I think we're still also just criticizing and trying to create a space in there, right? Again, a lot more details in here just for you to think about your topic, right, nothing much. I'd like to really look at some examples first. All right, so here. Now, looking at, we have extracted one example from a dissertation, all right? So the sentences are actually rather fragmented. I don't think this is a really good example, but some of the examples are actually not bad in a way that you'll be able to tell you the functions a little bit more. For example, as I mentioned earlier, you need to tell people the area of research that you're working on, all right? Later on, if you look at the examples here, can you tell me which one is basically telling you that, all right? Second of all, you might also want to define the key terms and also the key concepts for some of the writing, yeah? Here, this is how you're actually summarizing your lecture review, right? You're introducing, for example, on this particular topic, what are some of the approaches that people have done, then you are really summarizing. After summarizing them, of course, you need to talk about the weaknesses, how they are how they are not good enough, all right? And after talk about how they are not good enough, then you will actually summarize a little bit more and tell people, oh, you know what, they're not good enough. So clearly, there's a space in here. So earlier, students were asking me, so what exactly is the difference between 4 and 5 then? I mean, you're still criticizing the literature, right? So for 4, when you are talking about the witnesses, right, it could be about talking about a lot more studies in there. So for this study is not good enough, this study is not good enough, this study is not good enough. But when you talk about the gap, you're basically summarizing. Oh, so overall speaking, based on the witnesses, so the major gap seems to be about this. All right. So one here, research gap is more like a major summary of all the witnesses. Okay. All right. And then later on, I think adding examples you will know better. So you need to make some kind of assumptions. This one is rather optional and also rather unclear in examples actually. But at least you know what. Try these few. So why don't you have a look at the following examples, and then you tell me, are you able to locate the 6 functions in these sentences? Have a look. All right, simply write down the number. I think that would do. Oh, and also highlight. Whenever you're reading this, right? Can you highlight to me the language features that will tell you the function? All right.
if you're saying that this is actually like the research gap, right?
Yeah.
What are the words in here that will tell you this? Maybe not install.
I think that's a compilers. You know, the first sentence is speak top triggers.
I agree.
I like it. That's the research group.
Okay. All right. Cool. So we've also highlighted this part, like the not here, right? And also here, I think it's not embedded, right? Because after all, when you talk about, for example, gaps or when you talk weaknesses, right? They're supposed to be negative, right? You criticize it, right? Cool. I wouldn't say this is what when they fill in the sheets, right? There are certain words that they tell you that you're assuming, right? The next step, so what do they mean? You know, what kind of functions are they using? I mean, you actually got the right practice. Hey, everything good today? Okay? Oh, no, sorry. Yeah. I agree. So embedded, but technically like not embedded. I think the word not is rather important because in a way that you are criticizing, right? Okay.
You know what? Let me just tell you this. As I mentioned earlier, this kind of categorization is not exactly clear. It's not clear in the sense that we're not giving you the full picture. You don't have the context. You have only got fragments here. And that's why sometimes you may not be able to find out, hey, which one are you exactly talking about then? Or it may not be very clear. All right, so don't worry about the answers. What I will actually like you to pick up on, or to actually pick up here, would be the language items. all right, I need to know, hey, what would signify the function, or what would tell you the function behind that. All right, for example, here, quite a number here is saying that, hey, this is all about research gaps, and also, but for example here, I think apart from research gaps, we also talk about significance, all right? If you talk about significance, I think you're supposed to be a little bit more what? Concerning the tone. Concerning the tone, it should be a little bit positive here, right? Of course, when you talk about the gap, it could be negative. So there would be a change of tone in there, right? But of course, whenever you're doing your writing, you might not be combining the two together in a sentence. Only in our example, we're combining them, right? If when you're doing your actual writing, you have got one section talk about, the research gaps. You have got different section talk about significance. So the tone will be more coherent. It's just for our practice today, and that's why we're combining them together, all right? So why don't we have a look at this one together? So Nikon and Canon have both previously manufactured cameras which contain signed images using some kind of, things that will actually be embedded here. So quite a number of you were highlighting to me that unlike blah, blah, blah here, all right, you see the negative terms, we're saying that, well, hey, it's clearly not embedded, right? So what you are doing, all right, a lot of times, I think you're just criticizing, right? In a way, you're trying to tell me the weaknesses, how the previous studies, sorry, I'll just write out the word. Weakness. All right. So, think about this. You are criticizing this kind of. Sorry, you're actually criticizing the previous work. All right. By saying to people that it's actually better. All right. So therefore, need not install any kind of stuff, which is to tell people that for the previous key, it's clearly not good enough. All right, in A and B areas. Right, something is actually embedded there, and they need to install some kind of custom software. All right, so in a way, it's actually implied that you are criticizing. One thing though you can see, whenever you are sending things like this, right, you see the numbers here. All right, the numbers are actually what you have for IEEE referencing style. All right, and then on the reference list, then you should be able to find the entries number 9 and number 11. They both talk about the same ideas, all right? So actually, a better way will be moving that here, 9 and 11, I think. Switch around the position, all right? Okay, nothing much. Again, I would like you to think about, all of you have highlighted clearly the terms talk about like doing comparison, all right? Telling people that, hey, how they're different in a way, okay? Now, earlier some of you saying, hey, looking at this, it's clearly telling you about the genre. So this is also some kind of genre feature telling you about the focus of the paper, all right, in a way telling you about the research area. And that's why here, you see outlines, the word, keyword, outlines or focuses, for example, all right, or is situated in a particular area, then you know that we are talking about what? You can sort of know the field. Oh, I'm not talking about hardware, I'm talking about software application, all right? And exactly what is that? So you can see it here. This kind of software is specifically used for particular for certain purposes. What is that? Images authenticity, authorship, and blah 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 here. All right. So there is a particular focus of the work in here. So somewhat you're defining the scope of your paper, or defining the scope of your work. All right. If you're designing some kind of applications, I think you also need to write something about scope. All right. What does your application cover or not cover, right? So you need to define that a little bit more. That would be number 1 research area, all right? Area. As I mentioned earlier, I don't want to confuse you further, all right? So right here, then here you talk about the actual research gaps, and also the more likely, I would just say it's about the significance. So gap together with the value, or the significance. Where can you see that? Because if you look at the significance, right? As I mentioned earlier, when you talk about significance, it's supposed to be positive, and you can look at the words in here, all right? So to implement an alternative approach, all right? So you are filling in the gap. What is the gap? The gap, you talk about a different approach to the topic, all right? So what are the benefits? The benefits will actually give you something that was more scalable, less error prone, and a lot less costly than these systems. So you have got the actual values in there, or the significance. Okay, all right. So I think this part is rather straightforward. In a way, you're just trying to tell me the different approaches, right? So what kind of approaches do you have? Bear in mind, if you are doing this, right, how do you know there are different approaches? Look at the citations. In-text citations, you know what? If you look at this, our existing work, there are several things, A, B, and C. You see how the person is doing the summary here. It's not by people, or it's not like, hey, Chen and Wang did some kind of research study on blah blah blah, and they found out A, B, C, D, E. No. It's essentially grouped by ideas. All right. So you see how one author has actually worked on this, another author has worked on that, a third author has been working on that as well. Okay. So everything is summarized by idea. Okay, instead of by people. Okay. So there you go. Oh, by the way, whenever you're writing, right? As I mentioned earlier, for the first time, can you write out the full form, all right? And from the second time onwards, and then give me the acronyms or abbreviations in brackets for the second time onwards. Then you can start using this. I think if you are writing some kind of applications, there's usually a page right after tables of contents talk about abbreviations and acronyms, where you're listing all the acronyms that you use in your writing. But then in the main body, for the first time that it appears, you still need to write out the entire thing, all right? And then for the second time onwards, then you can use the abbreviation. As I mentioned earlier, do not assume that your readers, your examiners, your professors will know everything. I know you say that some of the terms are really basic, or for example, AI, artificial intelligence, but bear in mind, AI could also refer to some other things in other fields. So we want you to write out everything for the first time, right? Okay, so this is actually concerning writing style. So here, we talk about assumptions. So we talk about stating, assumptions and all that kind of stuff. Now, what kind of words in here would tell you that you are actually stating certain things or making assumptions here? I think pretty much just the word states, right? Or the documentation states that, and you know what? And even if you look, you see, the document states that this is Zoom's blah blah blah. So looking at this kind of language structure, I would expect later on you will be criticizing this, or you might be questioning this in your study. All right. So they say this, they assume this, but is that really going to be true? I don't know. All right. I'm just saying that it could be that this might form the basis for your criticism later on. Okay, or for your research space later on. Yeah. So this is more just like defining the key terms. So number 2, defining the key terms. So similar ideas as well here. All right. So please be sure to give me the acronym, all right, and write it the full form. Question: whenever you are giving me this kind of definition kind of stuff, right? Please provide some kind of reference, because technically, all right, in a lot of times, if you look at the existing studies, so many scholars are defining the same term in different ways. So you want to highlight to your researchers or your professors which particular definition you're going for. All right. I mean, for some of the terms you might say, oh, they're commonly known. I think that is fine. But a lot of times we also talk about one thing: add texture to your writing. You know what I mean here? Adding texture to your writing. So if you're able to actually provide a definition concerning a citation here, it will just add texture to writing to make it more academic in a way. All right. Again, for some terms they might be less controversial, but for some terms there are different definitions out there. So you definitely want to give a citation sometimes to show it to your professor, to show it to your examiners, which definition you are adopting in your work. You see what I'm saying, right? Okay? Okay. So one more time, you can see citations. Repeating myself, for every single idea that is not yours, please give us a citation, all right? Because you can think about this, what is exactly your idea, or something that you've read from some other papers, okay? Okay. So technically, when you're doing research paper, a lot of times, 80 to 90% of the time, you're citing work, you're citing papers and others, all right? And then this is what my research. You're putting together people's work. So what is research then? If you are copying from one person, then that is plagiarism. But if you're copying a lot of people, that's research, right? So this is what you do. You summarize, okay? So yeah, nothing much. Do you have any questions about this though? I mean, this is not very complete. I would like to show you a clearer example again, I just randomly downloaded a dissertation online. So I'm just gonna show. Are you serious? No, we're gonna do it here. Maybe later. All right. So I've actually downloaded one example here. So this is the example that I looked at earlier. Right. So still remember the traffic data forecasting, that kind of stuff, right? You have got different ideas out here. Looking at this really brief summary, look at the citations, and especially, you know what? Look at the topic sentence first. As I mentioned earlier, for each paragraph, there should be a clear function, right? Instead of grouping everything by people, the person's grouping that by idea. What is that idea here? So deep learning has been applied to what? So the idea about deep learning has been applied to forecast different traffic data. So here we go. Can I just highlight this, please? Here. So there you go. You've got the keywords. So even if I don't read the entire paragraph, I should know what this is all about. It's actually going to tell me about, hey, how deep learning has been applied in different to forecast traffic data anyways. All right, and there you go. You've got different examples below. Look at the citations. You actually need to cite a lot. And then whenever you're citing, right, remember, you are summarizing then. After summarizing, you need to criticize. What is not good enough then? Starting from which word are you able to find the criticism then? Read here a little bit further. Have a look. You don't need to read through the entire thing. Just look for the keywords. Which one? Thank you. However, all right. However, this spatial correlation. Look at whenever you're offering criticism, right? You don't want to be too strong, right? You want to hatch a little bit more. Maybe overlooked, all right? It's solely used to handle this. And then once you have got a gap here, once you have got a criticism, right? The next one is all about what? What about your research aim? So you've got a gap, you're trying to fill in the research aim. And that's why here, thus, we need a model that considers blah, blah, blah. And that's why in the following chunk, you are going to be filling in this kind of gap. That will be your work. So you see, wherever you're summarizing or doing your literature review, it's always straightforward, all right? Give a clear topic sentence, give the examples, right? Explain the examples, and then offer your criticism, all right? What is missing there? Okay, and then towards the end, you have got your research aim, right? This is how you are motivating your studies. Or why is that we need to work on this? Because you know what? Some kind of spatial correlation may have been overlooked, and that's why in my study, we're going to be looking at this kind of spatial correlation, as simple as this. You see the structure, right? Okay. So one more time summarizing is very straightforward. A, B, C have been done, and clearly E has never been done here, just like this. All right. So in our today's class, we're going to be looking at some more examples. Hopefully this makes sense to you. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. So all the time, bear in mind the tone, how you're changing from when you're criticizing, how you're changing that to a negative tone, and then whenever you're moving to your work, you are changing to something positive, all right? So the change of tone. And that's why I've been asking you guys to highlight keywords, all right? So I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint if this all right, sounds all right to you. When did we start class? We started at 10:30, right? Yeah. So let me give you a break. So why don't we take a break for 10, and then we're gonna come back to finish everything, all right?